People talk about leadership like it's theory. I've lived it in the mud, the chaos, and the moments nobody writes about. This show is the truth, raw, unfiltered, and built for leaders who actually give a damn. If you're ready to grow, ready to own your own story, and ready to lead from the front, you're in the right place. Speak up, show up, lead. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. This is a Leadership Live edition. I'm your host, JJ Hardy, with Chris Pinkowski, and he's there waving at everybody, saying hello. And today we're going to talk. It's our second episode on reinvention in 2026. So
Yes.
we're going to get into that in a second. First, I want to do a quick plug on my book, Speak Up, Show Up, Lead, the book. You can check it out on Amazon. Not going to do a huge plug because I do it every time, but Speak Up, Show Up, Lead at Amazon.com. Go check it out. Chris, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing great, JJ. How are you?
Man, I'm doing awesome. It's a great day. I love weekends, getting up early in the morning because I'm the only one who's ever up. So it's a nice, quiet house. What's going on with you?
Same. My wife's up, but the boys aren't going to be up yet. And yeah, dude, it's been a great week. Getting ready for a school play this afternoon. My middle son is a senior, so it'll be his last play at school. So looking forward to that.
Oh, wow. Well, it's kind of bittersweet. I'm sure it is for him anyway. But
Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of that, gosh, he's going into his next chapter already then here pretty soon. And he's got a few months to go in his senior year. My goodness.
Yep.
That was my daughter last year. And now she's halfway through her first year of college. It's crazy. But so speaking of the next chapter, this episode is called Insanity versus Reinvention. And Chris, you had a take on it when we were discussing what the topic was going to be all about. And I was really, really thinking about that wellness wheel, because when we talk about reinvention, there are a few areas of our life that oftentimes a lot of experts focus on when they're trying to help us do that next thing. And I don't always do that in my coaching because it's mostly leadership development and what you're doing in your management position and stuff like that. But I thought this was a really good way from my standpoint to talk about that. We'll get into what that wellness wheel looks like in just a minute. But what about you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think this is a great topic. And, that's one of the reasons that the first 4 episodes of this year, this kind of short this short session that we're doing, series, that's the word that I was looking for. This series is short. It's 4 episodes, and it was designed, kicking off this year of, how to be the leader that you want to be in 2026.
Yeah.
And what happens so often is, people start out, the new year, new me stuff. You've seen all the memes. We were discussing that we haven't seen a whole lot of activity on social media where people are posting, that stuff, where what their goals are going to be. But so many people fall into the trap of setting these New Year's resolutions, and then, what National Quitters Day is, like the 10th of January or something like that. So they go through the insanity of doing the same thing over and over again, yet never following through. But if you want to reinvent yourself, that is not an overnight process. That is something that you should look at starting January 1st of this year, using the calendar year, and say, by the end of this year, this is who I want to be as a leader. And now I'm going to work backwards, and I'm going to go step by step, and I'm going to make these very specific changes. And you're going to go through like the smart planning process, maybe once a quarter. If you truly want to reinvent yourself, it has to be purposeful. You've got to have the why in mind and you've got to stick with it. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I think not just, at the new year, I've been thinking about this since our episode that we did last week, and this is really really important to all my veteran brothers and sisters out there, because oftentimes we serve a certain amount of time, especially me, where I almost did 2 entire decades of military service. But when you go and try to do something else, reinvention is very important because you're not doing a job that is predictable anymore. That
Right.
your path to promotion is not the same. You're likely the job you were doing in the military is not going to be the same in the civilian world. So many things are going to change, and so this is this the things that we're talking about. Last episode was kind of an introduction to it all. This one we're gonna start getting into intentionality with it and start looking at things that you can consider when you're being when you're doing this reinvention, and when a reinvention isn't changing your whole life. It's just doing what you actually want to do as opposed to what you might have been drowning doing. And that's why we're calling it insanity, because if you keep on doing the same thing over and over and over again, isn't that a little bit batshit crazy? I mean, I think it is. So, I
It
mean,
is.
that's kind of what we're talking about. And if it's okay with you, Chris, the reason I wanted to bring the wellness wheel into this is because there are, oh, what is it, eight? Yeah, there are eight intentional things that we can focus on in our life and kind of run through the lens of, is what I'm doing aligning with me. And so if it's okay, can I just read those eight topics real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
So first, it starts off with spiritual. I'm not for me, that's religion. That's not religion for everybody. Whatever your belief is in a higher power, whether it's being one with nature, whether it's your God, whatever it is, that's very very important. The emotional side, that's I don't want to get ooey gooey because we're two guys having a conversation on here, but at the same time, emotional is important because how you feel about what you're doing is gonna really make a big difference as to how much effort you put into it and how much it really benefits your entire life. Occupational, we almost spent the entire last call talking about our occupation, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I think it's already looking like Judah Hamburger. Um, Intellectual, uh, you know, is it stimulating you? Is it really fulfilling your intellectual need? We'll go more into that. But environmental, are you where you should be? Whether it's your job, the place that you're living. I'm not telling you you should move. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, there are a lot of things that go into that. Financial, gosh, if you're broke and you're working a job that barely pays your bills, enough said.
Yep.
Social, a lot of people go to work, come home, go to work, come home, go to work, come home. If you're not feeling fulfilled in that social area, there are a lot of things you can do, and we can touch on that. I don't want to go too deeply into that, but there's a social aspect of life, and humans are gregarious creatures. So if you are shutting yourself off from everybody, you're probably not doing yourself a whole lot of justice. And then the last one is physical. Gosh, this is the one that I lose touch with the most. I will go hard on working out. I'll lose weight and I'll feel great and I'll do the right thing. But that this is the one area of discipline, in my opinion, that I every once in a while I fall off when I get busy doing all the other things, making sure that my family is good, making sure that my job is good, my business now and the podcast and everything else. And then I tend to make excuses on the physical side. I don't take care of myself the way I should, and I find that ends up bleeding into everything else, because when you're not physically fit, then you're likely not mentally fit. It starts bleeding into everything. You just start feeling lackluster. So I'm going to
Yep.
stop running my mouth. That was the wellness wheel. Those are the eight topics. What do you think about that, Chris?
Now, so I think that you can use that tool in a couple different ways, right? You can use it almost as a diagnostic of like, okay, where am I kind of feeling off? And that wheel can help you to like tune your dials, right? I look at that almost like a stereo equalizer,
Yep.
and you can set your bass higher, or your treble, or your mids, whatever. Um, but I like that wheel because it's very specific, and you can say, okay, where do I want to focus? And if I'm talking about reinvention, I think it's important to look at all the spokes on that wheel when you're thinking about any kind of reinvention, because you made a point where if your if your physical health is failing, then there's a pretty good chance that your mental health isn't that far behind, right? Or at least your peak performance from a mental standpoint isn't going to be what it could be if your physical health is, falling short.
Oh,
So,
yeah. It's not just
you
that, I
know,
mean, if you look at any if you're in the wrong environment, it's gonna affect how you perform in everything else, financial, enough
yep.
said. I mean, if you can't even afford to pay your bills, you're gonna be grinding and you don't have any time for yourself, so of course you're not gonna be happy. So it's all the way down the line. It's a really good way, and I know therapists use this tool because it helps when people go and they're just struggling and they're just distraught. It helps them try to figure out where in their life they're not feeling aligned. So I know I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I went and still I'm going to I've been in years of therapy. I'm a combat vet. It's just something that is normal for me. I have to have my constant tune up, otherwise I living in my head is a very fun place. It's like the most interesting circus in the entire world. So
Well, and I won't belabor that, but I do think that people have different views on therapy, but you
yep.
just used a key word. And, I've heard it said before that, like, you know what, you got to think of a therapist kind of like a mechanic, right? And
Mhm.
when your mental engine isn't running right and you need a tune up, that's the mechanic that you go to for a tune up, because they're trained in that stuff. Like, everyone deals with stuff, and you've got to be able to talk to someone about it who's going to be able to pull it out of your head, maybe even pull your head out of your ass before you can pull it out of your head and fix it. But if your head's not right, you're not going to be able to reinvent yourself, and you're not going to be the leader that you want to be.
Right, right. Well, and let's just be real. I mean, if you aren't the most social person, I mean, veterans, we tend to look at everyone else and say, really? And so when you have to learn how to change the way you're thinking about stuff, and so what therapy has done for me, I don't want to discourage anybody from going to therapy if they feel
Mm-mm.
like they need it, because it has taught me tools. The wellness wheel is just one of them. And by the way, I didn't even realize until I met a therapist buddy of mine that I do the Warrior Leadership podcast with, that I used to teach the doggone wellness wheel. It just looked different when I was in the military, when I was teaching resilience.
Right.
So if the wellness wheel helps you become more resilient and therapists use it, and they're not even coming from the same lens necessarily, then there are some things that, I mean, and there's a fine line between coaching and therapy anyway. And if professionals use coaching to become better, then if you're mentally distraught and you're not doing well in every area of your life, then therapy is just, it's going to do the same thing that coaching does for you. It just helps you look at things from a different standpoint. So I encourage people to do that if they need that mental tune up, especially if your marriage is going crazy, or maybe you're going crazy and you're that yelly guy like a lot of us old veterans are, and you got to figure out ways to cope. But when it comes to reinvention, it's also a way to do that, because when you learn tools to better understand who you are and what you need in your life to be fulfilled, it doesn't matter if it's a wellness wheel. It doesn't matter if it's smart planning. It doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, if you have a way to do something that will help you get to your end state a little bit better, I like to use smart planning with backwards planning, because everything, you can run everything through the smart framework, and then if you set up your end state and you figure out everything that you need to do to get to that end state, and execute the most actionable thing first, then my goodness, backward planning is a wonderful thing. I know you
Oh,
mentioned that,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm kind of running on and on and on here, but you mentioned that you mentioned the whole therapy thing, and I had to make sure I do a plug for that because a lot of people avoid therapy, and that could actually help you uh, with that reinvention.
No, you're right. Um, and I'm an advocate for that. So I don't think that anyone should be looking down on therapy or thinking about it from a negative standpoint. The negative is in some people's minds, it gets you out of your comfort zone. When you get out of your comfort zone is where growth happens.
Yep,
So if you want to grow, if you want to be the best that you can be, then that's something to consider if you're struggling with that.
yep, yep.
But if we're getting back on topic of insanity versus reinvention, what we talked about, hey, let's set our goal a year out. This is where we want to be, right? And coming up with the why, I think the why is super important when we're thinking about a reinvention, right? Because in my mind, reinvention is really making significant changes.
Hmm.
You could set certain goals that are going to help you to move the needle a little bit, but a reinvention of yourself is something that needs to be transformative, and it's really difficult to do that by doing the same things that you've always done and expecting a different response or outcome, which is the definition of insanity.
Yep.
So, what are some things in your mind, JJ, that how did people think big enough to say that's reinvention versus, hey, I'm just going to set, small goals? And I mean, I guess it all depends on the level of it, right? You have people that say, hey, I want to improve my public speaking this year. Is that because you want to be a paid speaker and you're trying to reinvent yourself that way? Or is it because you have a job that requires you to give presentations in front of people and you need to be a better public speaker? I think the differentiation of what you want to change and why is really where the rubber meets the road.
Well, I think that's important. I mean, when you figure out something that you want to do, and by the way, this is just like personal leadership, and we mentioned this last time too. If you start reinventing yourself and you realize you're going down a path that you don't like, you can always change it. But the why, when it comes to when it comes to reinvention, is most important. And you just brought this up, but whatever it is, whether it's speaking, whether it's getting more fit, or whether it's trying to find ways to improve your relationship because it's not exactly as good as you thought it would be, it has to make you excited. And so when you are defining why you're doing something, if it doesn't get you fired up, it's probably not strong enough.
Yeah,
And so define that why, and use that as your starting point. And as you're going through all the changes, then you can always reflect back on that. I'm a big guy on discipline versus motivation, because motivation is emotional and discipline gets you to the end goal. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a why to start with, then you're just going to be bouncing all over the map. And so I think it's really important to have that so that you can keep your eyes on the prize.
absolutely. The why drives everything.
It does.
Um, the why is what makes it personal, and it's what really makes us want to strive for it, right? You could say what you're going to do all day long, but unless it has meaning, unless it has a strong why, then your discipline, your motivation will absolutely fade because motivation is exactly what you said. But when the why is strong enough, the discipline is really where it ramps up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's hard to have discipline when you don't understand where to focus it. And that's really, I mean, it's why, but I don't want to get too deep into goal setting and backwards planning and being intentional, because that's what our that's kind of what the end call is about. But that's really what it is.
Yeah.
When you have that, I guess we can transfer over into vision then, because if you have a clear vision on what you're trying to do and you understand why you're going to do it. And let's talk about vision for a second, Chris, because I'm sure you're going to have a different take on that than I do. When you have a vision of something, it's not it's not an oh shit moment where all of a sudden you just close your eyes and you think to yourself, "Huh, yeah, I think I'm going to go and run 20 miles today." That's not the same thing as vision. That's an oh shit moment. Vision is
Right.
you see yourself doing something different than you've ever done before, or doing something that you've done but you kind of veered away from it, and you can see what it looks like to do that. You can literally see yourself doing that thing. You can feel what it's like to do that thing. You can almost reach out and touch everything that encompasses that thing, and it's like a complete visualization process of you completing. You understand what it looks like, and so that way when you are figuring out what it takes to do that, if you reflect back on how clear that vision is, then the planning to get to that vision, it's going to be a lot easier because there's so much more clarity.
Yeah.
I don't really know if there's a better way to say that, but I think that vision is an important part of this. If especially when you're trying, especially if you've never done the thing that you want to do, you have to try really, really hard. Visit with people that are doing that thing. Do everything you can to try to get that clear sight picture so that when you are moving in that direction, it's less likely that you're gonna veer off and go in some crazy direction that doesn't even make sense.
That's right. And you know, the sight picture is important when we're talking about what the vision is, because what I don't want people to think is that vision always has to be grandiose. It has to be a big, hairy, audacious goal. That's not what we're talking about here. Vision could be, yeah, it could be that, hey, by the end of this year, we'll use the public speaking, uh, example. By the end of this year, I want to be up on stages and being paid $10,000 every time I walk onto a stage to give a talk, right? That's big vision. There's definitely some reinvention there if that's not what you're doing now, or maybe if you're not at that level, yeah, you've got to reinvent to get there.
Mhm.
But the same concept holds true of by the end of this year, I want to be the best public speaker within my company because I'm giving presentations within my company. And that's different than being on a stage, being paid 10 grand and looking out on a huge audience where nobody knows you, but giving a presentation in a boardroom or a small, conference room with your peers is different, but it's the clarity around it. So your vision doesn't have to be, this big baller, like I'm going to do all this stuff. You just have to be clear on what you want to accomplish and then work towards it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you chose public speaking as that thing, because I was just talking to a fellow veteran yesterday. We were doing a business coaching thing, and he said that when I started talking about, because he has a nonprofit and a business where he could go and he could speak to like Rotary groups and stuff like that to help him get his message out there and potentially even start raising funds. He was like, "Oh, well, that's one thing I need to work on." And so he said that he does go to meetings at places like the American Legion and stuff like that. And I said, "Well, if you're really that nervous about it, and this is to your point, it could be so simple as making that small adjustment to walk up to whoever is doing that American Legion meeting and saying, "Hey, look, can I do the announcements today?"
Mhm.
Just small bite-sized chunks of improvement at a time. I mean, we'll just keep with public speaking. So if you're trying to get a little bit better, do 2 to 3 minutes in front of people you are familiar with already, and then start doing longer and longer and longer presentations with the people you already know, and then before you know it, you're ready to I'm done talking to you guys. I got to challenge myself a little bit differently. But the reason I said it that way is because when you do the small one first and then you do a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, you're going to feel like you're not being challenged anymore. But that first time you get up and do those announcements, that's going to feel like a huge giant feat. But when it doesn't feel like a huge giant feat, you know you're making progress.
Yeah.
And when you're setting goals and you're trying to reimagine yourself, if you take those small first steps, and it doesn't really matter what those are going to be uncomfortable at first, likely, but they're going to get easier and easier. And so as you're moving through and you're doing everything else that you have to do to get to that end state, likely it's going to get easier. And every new step is going to be back to that original discomfort, likely, or to some level of discomfort. But if you don't if you don't start, and if you don't give it a shot, and you don't actually work that discomfort muscle a little bit every single day, then you're never going to get to whatever that reinvention looks like. And
Yeah.
and so I'm glad you used public speaking, because I have a real life example of that I was just talking about yesterday. And it's actually not that difficult. I remember the first time when I was in the military, I was a specialist. I wasn't even in a leadership position yet. And they told me to get up and do PT, to instruct PT. And I was like this. My eyes got big and I was like, okay. And I'm not a quiet person. I never have been. But when I got out in front of that group, extend to the left, march, I was probably more quiet than I have ever been. And and so back to reinvention and doing the uncomfortable things to get to your goals, it's not going to look good when you first start doing it, but
Right.
do it anyway. You're not gonna get better at it without trying. And I know that any of us in this audience that are parents, we tell our kids the same thing. Now it's time for you to practice it yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's something too that people fear change, but you've got to embrace it. They fear it because it's different and it can be, uncomfortable. But you've got to embrace the change. You got to embrace the discomfort and know that it's going to get better. That's part of it too. Is you have to know in your heart that you know what, this is going to get better. Anytime you try something new, you're going to suck at it. Think about anything new that you've tried. The first time, the first few times, like it's awkward. I've never done this movement before. I've never been in this location before. There are so many different variables that you just have to account for. And you have to also be open minded and say, I don't know what I don't know about this, but I'm going to learn it along the way and I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to get better every single time. But it really just comes down to keep on moving. You've got to keep pushing towards that goal and you've got to do whatever it takes for you to achieve that reinvention. And if it's the vision board in your office or on the mirror in your bedroom or wherever, like someplace where you can look at that every single day that reinforces this is the mission that I'm on right now.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. It's that law of inertia, right? Where objects in motion stay in motion. And the reason that I brought that up, and I think the reason you mentioned it as well, because when you are moving toward whatever goal you're working on, and it's getting easier and easier for you all the time to do those uncomfortable things. The interesting thing, so it's the same as exercising. Have you ever been exercising and you get used to exercising and the exercise isn't so hard anymore? But if you take a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks off, the very next time you go exercise, it feels like you're trying to climb a doggone mountain. And
Yeah.
so it that forward momentum, that inertia is extremely important because without that momentum moving you into that next phase of your life, every break you take, it's going to be harder for you to get started. So don't quit on yourself in the middle of it. And I said that very specifically because you're not quitting on the goal. If you really want to reinvent yourself and you want to do this new thing and change your job or whatever the case may be, you have to keep moving at it because getting started again is not quitting on that thing, it's quitting on yourself.
Mhm.
And if you're going to quit on yourself, then what does that say about how you're going to do everything else? Just remember that. Yeah, and I'm
Yep.
not saying you're a loser if that's something that you do. You if you don't think about it, you don't actually think that that's the way it works. When you're in the middle of doing things and you take a break from something and go do something else, you think you're prioritizing sometimes. But if it's really, really important, you just got to keep going with it. Doesn't make you a loser if you take a break, but the important thing is that you go back to that thing. You don't lose until you quit. So
Right. When you quit is when you become a loser.
thank you, Chris, for saying that so eloquently. Yes, you don't lose until you quit, and so just for anybody who's trying to take that next step into doing whatever it is that they want to do it for you.
Mhm.
And you're going to be a better person for those other people around you, and you deserve that. And when you get started, it's going to be ugly. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have small failures. I don't even like to use that word, but a lot of people do use it, so I'm going to go ahead and use it because it probably relates to you. And just make sure you persevere through those little failures, and you embrace the ugliness, and you do what you got to do because you are that important.
Yep. Agreed.
And we're over 30 minutes already. What do you have to close this out, Chris?
I guess where I'll close this out from my end is I would encourage people to look at what they've tried in the past. If you're wanting to set a similar goal as you had last year and the year before, I want you to really think about it from the perspective of why didn't that work in the past? Like, stop the insanity of setting the same freaking goal every year and not achieving it, and learn from where did I fail before, so that now you know those breaking points. You can mentally prepare for it, but you've got to have a strong why that of what you're shooting for if you really want to reinvent yourself. So look back on the past, learn from it, and then be very clear about where you're going in the future.
I like that. And so I'm not going to say what I was going to say. I'm going to go ahead and just provide a little extra clarity because some people have a hard time trying to reflect back on those things because really that's hard to do. How do you reflect back on things? I
Yeah.
mean, just thinking about it, are you going to wallow in it? No. So let's provide a framework for you. In the military, we had something called an AAR, an after action review.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
when you're reflecting back on these things, like Chris was just discussing, then look at what went right, what went wrong, because there's always a little bit of both. You have to sometimes dig a lot more for what went right. But then you look at what you can do differently, what you can sustain, and what you can throw away.
Mhm.
And also what you can improve. And just make sure that, I mean, that's how you debrief. That's how you reflect, because if you don't do those things, then you're never going to know what you can do differently. You actually have to be intentional about trying to, I'm not going to use profanity. So fix yourself. You have
Yeah.
to be intentional about it. So that's really all I
Intentionality
have
is
to
the
say
key.
about that. What's that?
I said intentionality is the key.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's what number 4 is going to be. So with that in mind, our very next episode that we're going to be going into, is reinvention without losing your edge.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what that means, tune in next time because we're going to talk about it.
Yes.
But it's all about providing guidance and framework that will help you figure out how to move toward that next goal or that reinvention. Goal, we could call it a goal because reinvention is just, you know, it's doing things to achieve things. So that's really all it is. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Chris, for joining me again today, as always. And don't forget, everybody out there, to like the videos, subscribe at wherever you're seeing it. But the most important thing is, we like talking about things that are going to benefit our audience. So wherever you're seeing this, leave a comment below and tell us what you want to hear so that we can cater this. And if you have any questions, you can ask those too. That's important.
Drop those comments. We do respond to them. We read them, we respond, we engage. So beyond just the live portion of the show, engage with us on the socials and we will get back to you.
That's right. All right, everybody. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time.
Have an awesome day.